On a rain-soaked stretch of Interstate 40, Tyler Bennett and his service dog Ranger pulled over to help a woman whose car had veered into the median. Tyler didn't think twice. He'd spent years running toward danger, not away from it. But as he knelt in the mud changing her tire, his truck's registration reminder sat unopened on his dashboard, stamped "Final Notice" in red. What Tyler didn't know was that the trembling woman he was helping had the power to change his life forever. And what happened next proved that sometimes the smallest acts of decency echo in ways we never see coming. The rain came down in sheets that November afternoon, turning the highway into a blur of brake lights and spray. Tyler Bennett kept his eyes on the road, his right hand occasionally dropping to scratch behind Ranger's ears. The German Shepherd sat rigid in the passenger seat of the 2003 Ford F-150, alert to every shift in his handler's mood. Tyler's phone buzzed again. Another text from his landlord. He didn't need to read it to know what it said. He was 12 days late on rent, and patience had worn thin. The envelope on the dashboard told the same story. Vehicle registration past due, late fees accumulating, payment required by Friday or face penalties. It was Wednesday. Tyler had exactly $47 in his checking account and 3/4 of a tank of gas. The VA check wouldn't come for another 6 days. He'd already sold his tablet, his good boots, and the camping gear he'd been saving for a trip he knew he'd never take. The math didn't work anymore. It hadn't worked for months. "We'll figure it out, Ranger," he said quietly, though he wasn't sure who he was trying to convince. The accident happened fast. Through the rain, Tyler saw the sedan weaving slightly in the right lane ahead. Then the brake lights flared, too hard, too sudden. The car fishtailed once, overcorrected, and slid sideways into the grassy median with a sickening crunch of metal and mud. Tyler's combat instincts kicked in before thought. He hit his hazards and pulled onto the shoulder, tires spraying water. "Stay!" he commanded Ranger, then grabbed his rain jacket and pushed out into the storm. The sedan sat at a steep angle in the soft earth, its front wheel buried axle deep. Tyler approached carefully, scanning for injuries, for fire, for danger the way he'd been trained. Through the rain-streaked windshield, he could see a woman gripping the steering wheel, her face pale with shock. Tyler tapped on the window. "Ma'am? Are you hurt?" The window lowered an inch. Her voice shook. I think I'm okay. The car it's all right. Can you turn the engine off for me?" Tyler kept his voice calm, the tone he'd used 100 times in worse situations. She complied, fingers fumbling with the ignition. "Let me check your wheel," Tyler said. "Might just be stuck." He circled the car, rain soaking through his jacket instantly. The front passenger tire had blown, probably from hitting something in the median. The car was definitely stuck, but it was a simple fix, if he had the equipment. Tyler returned to her window. "Your tire's blown, and you're in soft mud. I've got a jack and a spare. I can get you back on the road." The woman's eyes widened. You'd do that?" "Yes, ma'am." What Tyler didn't mention was that the spare tire in his truck was his last good one. He'd been planning to sell it this week, $50, maybe $60 if he found the right buyer. It would have covered 2 days of food and bought him a few more days on the rent. But as he looked at this woman, shaking and alone on a dangerous highway in a storm, Tyler thought about the 3 times he'd been stranded overseas and the people who'd stopped to help when they didn't have to. He thought about the medic who'd carried him 2 miles with a torn ACL because leaving him wasn't an option. He thought about Ranger, who'd been assigned to him when nobody else believed he'd ever function again. "Pop your trunk," Tyler said. "I'll get your spare." Except she didn't have one, or a jack, or anything useful. Tyler stood in the rain, water running down his face, and made his choice. It took less than a second. "I'll use mine," he said. "Be right back." 20 minutes later, Tyler's spare tire sat on the woman's sedan, properly torqued, road-ready. His hands were black with grease and mud, his jeans soaked through. The woman stood beside him, holding an umbrella that did nothing against the sideways rain. "I don't know how to thank you," she said. "Please, let me pay you." Tyler shook his head. "You don't owe me anything, ma'am. Just get home safe." He walked back to his truck where a Ranger waited, and he didn't let himself think about what he'd just given away. Tyler sat in his truck for a long moment after the woman drove away, watching her taillights disappear into the rain. His hands were still black with road grime, and his clothes stuck to his skin with cold dampness. Ranger leaned against him, warm and solid. The envelope on the dashboard seemed to glow in the dim light. Registration due. No spare tire to sell now. $47 to last 6 days. Tyler started the truck and pulled back onto the highway, more careful now about every bump and pothole. One flat tire would strand him completely. The thought sat heavy in his chest like a stone. By the time he reached his apartment in Cedar Ridge, the rain had softened to a drizzle. Tyler parked in his designated spot and sat there, engine ticking as it cooled, doing math that refused to add up. Rent was $860. He was 12 days late. His landlord, Carl Morrison, had been understanding once, then twice. There wouldn't be a third time. The apartment was cold. Tyler had turned the heat down to save money, keeping it just warm enough that the pipes wouldn't freeze. He fed Ranger first, watching the dog eat with mechanical efficiency. Service dogs didn't complain, didn't judge, didn't question why their handler sometimes chose hunger over asking for help. Tyler made himself a sandwich with the last of the bread and some turkey that was probably a day past safe. It didn't matter. He'd eaten worse in worse places. His phone buzzed. Not the landlord this time, a text from his sister in Ohio. Just checking in. You good? Tyler stared at the message. Jessica had her own problems. 2 kids, a husband recovering from surgery, a mortgage that stretched them thin. She'd offered to help before, and Tyler had refused. He'd been the big brother, the protector, the one who enlisted to send money home. He couldn't become the burden now. Yeah, all good, he typed back. Ranger and me doing fine. Tell the kids hi. He set the phone down and looked at Ranger, who was watching him with those knowing brown eyes. Service dogs were trained to read stress, to intervene before the darkness could take hold. Ranger stood, crossed the small living room, and pressed his weight against Tyler's legs, grounding pressure, a reminder that he wasn't alone. I know, buddy, Tyler said quietly. I'm okay, just tired. But he wasn't thinking about what he'd lost today. He was thinking about the woman on the highway, how she'd looked so lost, so scared. He was thinking about how good it had felt to fix something, to be useful, to remember that he was still the person who ran toward trouble instead of away from it. That was worth more than a spare tire. Tyler pulled out his laptop, the screen flickering to life with the battery icon showing 16%. He couldn't afford to replace the charger he'd broken last month, so he used it sparingly. He opened his browser and started looking at options. Day labor jobs, gig work, anything that paid immediately. There were a few possibilities: moving jobs, yard work, warehouse shifts. He bookmarked 3 postings and closed the laptop to save power. That night, Tyler lay in bed with Ranger stretched out beside him, the dog's warmth better than any blanket. Through the thin walls, he could hear his neighbor's television, their ordinary evening sounds. Normal life, the kind he sometimes forgot existed. He thought about the woman's face when he told her she didn't owe him anything. The surprise in her eyes, like kindness, was unexpected. Maybe it was these days. Maybe the world had gotten so used to transactions and exchanges that simple decency seemed strange. Tyler closed his eyes and tried not to think about Friday, when the registration was due. Tried not to think about the conversation he'd need to have with Carl about the rent. Tried not to think about the slow slide from barely making it to not making it at all. But even as sleep pulled him under, Tyler knew he'd do it again. He'd give that tire away again, make that same choice again, because the alternative was becoming someone he didn't recognize in the mirror. And he'd lost too much already to lose himself, too. Catherine Ashford sat in her downtown office on the 43rd floor, hands wrapped around a cup of tea she hadn't touched. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, the city stretched out below her like a circuit board of lights. Somewhere in that sprawl was the man who'd saved her yesterday, and she had no way to find him. Her assistant, David Sterling, knocked and entered. Mrs. Ashford, the board meeting in 15 minutes. Cancel it, Catherine said quietly. David blinked. In 12 years of working for Catherine, he'd never heard her cancel a board meeting. Ma'am? I need you to find someone for me. Catherine turned from the window. At 67, she'd built one of the most successful philanthropic foundations in the country, funded hospitals and schools, changed thousands of lives. But yesterday, a stranger had changed hers, and she couldn't let it go. She told David about the accident, about the veteran who'd stopped in the storm, who'd given his own tire and refused payment. "He saved me, David, and he had nothing. I could see it, in his clothes, his truck, the way he looked at that spare tire before he put it on my car. He needed that tire, and he gave it anyway." David listened, already taking notes. "Did you get a name? License plate?" "I tried to get his name, but he just said ma'am and left. The truck was an early 2000s Ford F-150, dark blue, Colorado plates. I remember part of it, started with RFT. And there was a dog, a German Shepherd, in the passenger seat." "That's enough," David said. "I'll start with state databases. Colorado plates registered around Cedar Ridge. That's the area you broke down near. Ford F-150S from that era. Cross-reference with military records if we can." Catherine nodded, feeling something unfamiliar. Helplessness. She'd spent decades solving problems with money and influence, but this was different. This was personal. "Why does it matter so much?" David asked gently. Catherine was quiet for a moment. "Because yesterday, I saw something I thought had disappeared. Pure decency. No angle, no agenda. Just a man doing what was right because it was right." She looked at David. "Do you know how rare that is, in my world, in any world?" She didn't mention the other part, the part where she'd seen her late husband in that stranger's face, not in features, but in character. Robert had been like that once, before wealth and success had complicated everything. Before he died in a helicopter crash 3 years ago, leaving her with more money than she could spend in 10 lifetimes and a growing conviction that most of it should find better hands. "There's something else," Catherine said. "When he was changing the tire, his phone fell out of his pocket. I saw the screen before he grabbed it. A text message, something about final notice on rent." David's pen stopped moving. "He was being evicted?" "Or close to it," Catherine's voice hardened with determination. "He gave me his last spare tire when he was about to lose his home. Find him, David, however long it takes." Over the next 3 days, David worked his network. Private investigators, DMV contacts, VA database consultants who owed the Ashford Foundation favors. Slowly, the picture came together. Tyler John Bennett, age 34, Marine Corps veteran, 3 tours, medically discharged 4 years ago. Service dog registered under his name, Ranger, German Shepherd, PTSD support animal. Current address, Garden Court Apartments, Cedar Ridge, Colorado. Employment, sporadic contract work. Income, minimal. VA disability, 30% rated. David brought the file to Catherine on Thursday afternoon. She read it twice, each detail painting a clearer picture of a man trying to hold on by his fingernails. "He has a rental hearing tomorrow," David said quietly. "Eviction proceeding. He's $1,200 behind." Catherine stood, her decision already made. "Clear my schedule tomorrow. We're going to Cedar Ridge." "Ma'am, the foundation gala is tomorrow evening. 200 donors. Then we leave at dawn," Catherine said firmly. "David, this man changed my tire in a rainstorm when he was about to lose everything. The least I can do is show up before he loses more." She looked at the file again, at the service photo paperclipped to the first page. Tyler Bennett, younger, in uniform, before whatever had broken him, before the hard years had etched lines around his eyes. "Find out where his eviction hearing is scheduled," Catherine said. "We're going to make sure he keeps that apartment." Friday morning arrived cold and gray. Tyler woke before dawn, Ranger already awake beside him, sensing the tension that had kept Tyler tossing most of the night. Today was the eviction hearing. Today was vehicle registration due. Today, everything came apart or somehow held together. He had $63 now, 16 more than Wednesday, earned yesterday from a 4-hour moving job he'd found on a day labor app. It had been brutal work, hauling furniture up 3 flights of stairs for a young couple who tipped him $5 extra. Tyler had almost cried at that $5, $63. The registration needed $42. That left $21 for rent, for food, for Ranger's next vet appointment, for a spare tire he couldn't afford to replace. Tyler got dressed in his cleanest jeans and the button-up shirt he saved for job interviews that never quite materialized. He fed Ranger, then stood in the kitchen, looking at his own empty bowl. He'd eaten yesterday. He could skip today. The eviction hearing was at 10 o'clock. Carl Morrison had filed the paperwork 2 weeks ago, apologetic but firm. "You're a good tenant, Tyler. Quiet, respectful, but I've got a mortgage too. I can't keep waiting." Tyler understood. He didn't blame Carl. He blamed himself for not being able to keep a regular job, for the panic attacks that came without warning, for being unable to sit in offices or handle crowds or trust that people meant what they said. The VA rated him at 30% disability. Some calculator somewhere had determined that his broken parts were worth $467.30 a month, which was enough to starve slowly, but not enough to live. At 9:30, Tyler loaded Ranger into the truck and drove toward the county courthouse, trying not to think about what came next if the judge ruled against him. Sleeping in the truck, maybe. The shelter, if they allowed dogs. The street, if they didn't. But he wouldn't give up Ranger. That wasn't negotiable. The courthouse parking lot was half full. Tyler found a spot in the shade where Ranger could wait comfortably, windows cracked, water bowl full. "Be right back, buddy," he said, scratching behind the dog's ears. Ranger licked his hand, trusting, loyal, deserving better than what Tyler could provide. Inside, the courthouse smelled like floor wax and recycled air. Tyler found the right courtroom and sat in the back row, watching other cases get called. Each one told a story. People behind on bills, families fracturing, the machinery of consequence grinding through lives one hearing at a time. "Bennett versus Morrison," the clerk called. Tyler stood, his heart hammering. Carl was there too, looking uncomfortable. The judge, an older woman with reading glasses on a chain, reviewed the paperwork with practiced efficiency. "Mr. Bennett, you're $1,200 in arrears. Mr. Morrison has been patient, but patience has limits. Do you dispute the amount?" "No, Your Honor." "Can you pay today?" Tyler's mouth was dry. "No, Your Honor." "Do you have a plan to pay within the next 30 days? This was the moment. Tyler could lie, could promise what he couldn't deliver, buy himself another month of drowning slowly, or he could tell the truth. "I'm trying, Your Honor. I've been picking up day labor when I can. My VA check comes on the 23rd. I can pay part of it then." "Part isn't all," the judge said, not unkindly. "Mr. Morrison has rights too." Carl shifted. "Your Honor, if I could, Tyler's been a good tenant. If he can pay half by the end of the month, I can work with him on the rest." The judge looked at Tyler. "Can you pay $600 by November 30th? Tyler did math he'd already done 1,000 times. It didn't work. It wouldn't work. But he heard himself say, "Yes, Your Honor." "Then I'm going to defer this eviction for 30 days. If you're not current by December 1st, Mr. Morrison can refile and there will be no second deferment. Do you understand?" "Yes, Your Honor." Tyler walked out of the courthouse into cold sunlight, having just promised $600 he had no way to earn. Ranger greeted him with a wagging tail, happy just to see him, ignorant of how close they were to the edge. Tyler sat in the truck for a long time, forehead against the steering wheel, trying to figure out how to keep a promise he couldn't keep. Then, his phone rang. Unknown number. Tyler almost didn't answer. Unknown numbers meant collection agencies or scams, neither of which he had time for. But something made him swipe accept. "Hello? Mr. Bennett? Tyler Bennett?" A man's voice, professional, neutral. "Yeah, that's me. My name is David Sterling. I'm an assistant to Catherine Ashford. You helped her on Interstate 40 3 days ago. She's been trying to find you." Tyler's mind went blank. "I'm sorry, who?" "The woman whose tire you changed, in the rain. She'd very much like to speak with you, if you have a moment." Sure, I guess. Is she okay?" "She's fine, thanks to you. Are you still at the courthouse?" Tyler's blood went cold. "How do you know where I am?" "Mrs. Ashford is actually here. She's been waiting outside since 9 o'clock. She didn't want to intrude on your hearing, but she was hoping to catch you afterward. She's in a black Mercedes, 2 rows behind your truck." Tyler turned slowly. Sure enough, There was a Mercedes S-Class, windows tinted, parked with executive precision. As he watched, the rear door opened and a woman stepped out. She was older, maybe late 60s, dressed in a navy suit that probably cost more than Tyler's truck. But her face, that was the face he remembered from the highway, younger somehow now that fear wasn't filling it. Tyler got out of his truck. Ranger barked once, uncertain. "It's okay," Tyler said, though he wasn't sure it was. The woman approached, and a tall man in an equally expensive suit walked beside her, presumably David Sterling. She stopped a respectful distance away, and Tyler saw her eyes were wet. "Mr. Bennett," she said, "thank you for seeing me." "Ma'am, you didn't have to track me down. I was just helping a stranger who didn't deserve your kindness," Catherine finished, "giving me your spare tire when you were 3 days away from an eviction hearing." Tyler felt his face flush. "You heard that?" "We were waiting to talk with you." "I didn't mean to eavesdrop, but—" Catherine took a breath. "Mr. Bennett, do you know who I am?" "Should I?" David spoke quietly. "This is Catherine Ashford, the Ashford Foundation, 12 hospitals, 43 schools, veterans housing projects in 17 states. The name clicked. Tyler had seen it, on buildings, on programs, on pamphlets at the VA. The Ashford Foundation was everywhere, doing everything, helping everyone, and he'd changed her tire. "Oh," Tyler said stupidly. "Oh." Catherine smiled, and it transformed her face. "3 days ago, I was terrified and alone on a highway. You stopped, you helped, you refused payment. Then I learned you gave me the tire you were planning to sell to pay your bills." Her voice broke slightly. "Mr. Bennett, I've spent 40 years in philanthropy, trying to help people. And in 5 minutes, you showed me what real generosity looks like." Tyler shook his head. "Ma'am, it was just a tire." "It was your last tire. It was the difference between making rent and not making rent. It was everything you had and you gave it to a stranger." Catherine stepped closer. "I heard the judge give you 30 days to come up with $600. I'd like to help." "No," Tyler said immediately. "No, I can't." "Let me finish, please." Catherine's voice was gentle but firm. "I'm not offering charity. I'm offering what you gave me, a chance to not fall. You kept me from spending the night on that highway in the cold. Let me keep you from spending nights in your truck." Tyler looked at Ranger, at the courthouse, at this woman who'd found him somehow. "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll accept help," Catherine said. "The way I accepted yours. Say you'll let me cover your back rent, get you current. Say you'll give me a chance to pay forward what you started." David held out an envelope. "It's a check. $1,200 to clear your arrears. No strings, no repayment needed. Just a gift, Mr. Bennett, from someone whose life you made significantly better." Tyler's hands were shaking. He thought about the promise he'd made in the courthouse, the impossible math, the 30 days he didn't have. He thought about Ranger, about the apartment, about heat in the winter and food in the morning. "I don't understand why," he said quietly. "Because kindness deserves kindness," Catherine said simply. "And because you proved something I needed to see proven, that good people still exist." Tyler stared at the envelope in David's outstretched hand. $1,200, enough to fix everything, enough to breathe again. He didn't take it. "Ma'am, I appreciate this, more than you know, but I can't accept money for doing what anyone should do." Catherine's expression didn't change, but something softened in her eyes. "Mr. Bennett, do you know how many cars passed me on that highway before you stopped?" Tyler was quiet. 47, Catherine said. "I counted. 47 vehicles saw me stuck in the mud in a storm, and 47 people decided it wasn't their problem. You were the 48th. You stopped. So please don't tell me that what you did is what anyone would do, because empirically, it isn't." Tyler struggled for words. "I was a Marine. We don't leave people behind." "You've been a civilian for 4 years, David said quietly. "You could have kept driving too." Tyler looked down at Ranger, who was watching through the truck window with alert attention. "If I take your money, then what I did becomes a transaction. It becomes me helping you, so you'd help me. It makes it dirty. Or, Catherine said, it becomes a circle instead of a transaction. You helped me, I help you. Someday, you help someone else. That's not dirty, Mr. Bennett. That's how the world is supposed to work. Tyler's throat was tight. He thought about the empty apartment, the cold nights coming, the choice between food and heat. He thought about Ranger, who deserved stability, who'd been trained to keep Tyler alive and got nothing in return but uncertainty. How did you even find me? Tyler asked. David is very resourceful, Catherine said with a slight smile. Also, I have significant resources at my disposal. When I decide something matters, it tends to get done. And I matter. What you did matters. Catherine stepped closer. Mr. Bennett, Tyler, can I tell you something? He nodded. My husband died 3 years ago. Helicopter accident. He was a good man, but success had changed him, made him hard, made him forget what it felt like to struggle. When he died, he left me with more money than any human needs and a foundation that does good work, but she paused. I'd lost faith. I'd started to believe that people only helped when cameras were watching, only gave when they'd get recognition. I was becoming cynical. The words came quietly. Then you appeared on that highway, soaking wet, giving away something you needed desperately, refusing payment. You restored something I'd lost, Tyler. You reminded me that goodness exists without an agenda. That's worth far more than $1,200. Tyler felt tears burning behind his eyes. He'd been holding it together for so long, through the court hearing, through the impossible math, through every small humiliation of not being enough. And now, this woman, this stranger, was telling him that his broken life had somehow mattered. If you won't take the money for yourself, Catherine said, take it for Ranger. He depends on you. He needs you stable. Take it so you can keep being the person who stops for strangers, who does the right thing. Because the world needs that person. Tyler looked at the envelope again, at Catherine's face, at David, who was holding the check with patient professionalism, at his truck, at Ranger, at the courthouse behind him. Just until I get back on my feet, Tyler heard himself say. Just until I can pay it forward. That's all I'm asking, Catherine said gently. Tyler took the envelope with shaking hands. The paper felt impossibly light for something so heavy with meaning. Thank you, he whispered. I don't know how to thank you. You already did, Catherine said. On Wednesday afternoon, in the rain, on Interstate 40. Now you're just giving me a chance to say thank you back. David handed Tyler a business card. That's Mrs. Ashford's direct line, and mine. If you need anything, references for jobs, help with VA benefits, anything, call. I can't. You can, Catherine interrupted firmly. And you will, because accepting help isn't weakness, Tyler. It's wisdom. It's letting the circle continue. Tyler nodded, unable to speak past the knot in his throat. There's one more thing, Catherine said. I'd like to buy you lunch, if you have time. Just a conversation, no more checks, I promise. Just two people who met on a highway, sharing a meal. Tyler looked at Ranger, at the envelope in his hands, at this woman who'd hunted him down just to say thank you. I'd like that, he said finally. I'd like that a lot. They went to a small diner on the edge of Cedar Ridge, the kind of place with cracked vinyl booths and coffee that came in endless refills. Tyler insisted on somewhere dogs were welcome, and Catherine didn't blink, just asked David to find the most dog-friendly restaurant in town. Ranger lay under the table, calm and watchful. Tyler sat across from Catherine, still feeling like he was in some surreal dream. Tell me about Ranger, Catherine said after they'd ordered. So Tyler did. He talked about the panic attacks that had started after his third deployment, about the nightmares that made sleep impossible, about the VA psychiatrist who'd suggested a service dog. He talked about meeting Ranger at the training facility, about how the dog had looked at him with those knowing eyes and somehow understood everything Tyler couldn't say out loud. He's the reason I'm still here, Tyler said quietly. Literally. He wakes me from nightmares. He blocks people when I'm overwhelmed. He reminds me to take my meds. Tyler scratched Ranger's ears. He's a better friend than I deserve. Yeah. I think you deserve quite a bit more than you give yourself credit for, Catherine said. Over lunch, Tyler tried not to think about how long it had been since he'd eaten a real meal. Catherine told her own story. About building the foundation with her husband, about the work they'd done, about the emptiness that had followed his death. "I've been throwing money at problems," she admitted. "Writing checks, cutting ribbons, attending galas, all good work, meaningful work. But somewhere along the way, I lost touch with why we started, with the individual human beings behind the statistics." She looked at Tyler. "You reminded me. Not by talking about it, but by being it. By stopping when everyone else drove past." 2 hours passed. They talked about Tyler's military service, about Catherine's father who'd fought in Vietnam, about the disconnect between what the country said it valued and what it actually supported. They talked about Ranger, about Catherine's late husband's golden retriever, about how dogs understood loyalty in ways humans had forgotten. When they finally stood to leave, Catherine hesitated. "Tyler, I have a proposition. And before you say no, just listen." Tyler waited, wary. "The Ashford Foundation has a veterans housing initiative. We're building apartment complexes specifically for veterans, affordable rent, pet-friendly, support services on site. We have a location breaking ground in Cedar Ridge in 3 months." She paused. "I need someone to run it, someone who understands the population, who's lived it, who won't treat residents like case numbers." "Mrs. Ashford, it's not charity, Tyler. It's a job. $40,000 a year, benefits, housing included once the building is complete. Until then, we'd put you in temporary housing, something better than Garden Court, still affordable." She met his eyes. "You'd be helping hundreds of veterans, doing for them what I'm trying to do for you, giving them a chance to stabilize." Tyler's mind reeled. "I'm not qualified. I don't have management experience. You have something better. You have empathy. You have understanding. You have lived experience." Catherine's voice was firm. "I can teach you management. I can't teach someone to care." "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll think about it. Take the weekend. Call me Monday." Catherine handed him another card. "David will send over the details, job description, expectations, everything. Read it. Consider it. And Tyler?" She smiled. "You changed my tire. You can handle this." Over the next 2 weeks, Tyler's world shifted. He moved into a small house the foundation rented. Nothing fancy, but clean, warm, with a fenced yard for Ranger. He paid his back rent at Garden Court, shook Carl Morrison's hand, and moved on. He started learning the job, shadowing David and other foundation managers, absorbing information about budgets and compliance in resident services. It was overwhelming. It was terrifying. It was the first time in 4 years that Tyler felt like he was moving forward instead of just surviving. But he didn't change. Every Sunday, Tyler volunteered at the VA, helping other veterans navigate benefit systems. He still stopped for stranded motorists. He still tipped more than he should when he saw servers struggling. Catherine noticed. "You know," she said one afternoon at the construction site, "most people would take this opportunity to focus on themselves, to hoard the good luck." Tyler shrugged. "Someone helped me. Now I help others. That's how it's supposed to work, right?" Catherine smiled. "That's exactly how it's supposed to work." 8 months later, the Ashford Veterans Housing Complex opened in Cedar Ridge. 24 apartments, all full within a week, all housing veterans who'd been where Tyler had been. On the edge, holding on by fingernails, one crisis from disaster. Tyler stood in the community room on opening day, wearing a polo shirt with the Ashford Foundation logo, watching residents move in with their families, their dogs, their small collections of belongings. He saw his own story reflected in every face. Catherine stood beside him, David on her other side. "You did this," she said quietly. "You funded it. I wrote a check. You built it." She gestured around the room. "You picked every resident. You designed every support system. You made this place what it is." It was true. Tyler had insisted on specific things. No breed restrictions for service dogs, flexible lease terms for residents in crisis, counselors who'd actually worked with PTSD instead of just read about it. He'd fought for washer-dryer units in every apartment because he remembered dragging laundry to laundromats in winter, feeding quarters into machines while trying to keep Ranger close. "There's someone I'd like you to meet," Tyler said, spotting a figure near the entrance. James Carter wheeled himself across the room, his service dog, a lab mix named Duke, walking beside the wheelchair. James was Tyler's first resident, a veteran who'd been living in his car after a landlord refused to rent to someone with a PTSD service dog. "Mrs. Ashford," Tyler said, "this is James. He's in apartment 3B. Catherine shook James's hand warmly. "Welcome home." "Thank you, ma'am, for all of this." James looked around, his eyes wet. "I've been on waiting lists for 2 years. Tyler called me personally, said there was a place for me and Duke, no questions asked." "Tyler has good instincts," Catherine said. After James wheeled away, Catherine turned to Tyler. "You know what we're going to do next? Build another one? 3 more. Santa Fe, Portland, and somewhere in the Midwest. Same model. And I want you to oversee all of them." Tyler felt the familiar surge of inadequacy. "I'm still learning this one." "And you're doing brilliantly. Tyler, in 8 months you've created something special here. These residents don't just have housing, they have community. They have someone who understands. We're replicating that." That evening, after the last resident had moved in and the volunteers had gone home, Tyler drove back toward his own small house. But he took the long route, the one that passed Interstate 40. He pulled onto the shoulder near where Catherine's car had gone into the median 8 months ago. The grass had long since recovered. No trace remained of that rainy November afternoon. Tyler sat there, Ranger beside him, thinking about the chain of events that had started here. One choice, made in rain and desperation, had led to everything else, had led to 24 families having homes, had led to Tyler having purpose again, had led to Catherine regaining her faith in humanity. One spare tire, one moment of choosing right over easy. His phone buzzed. A text from Catherine. "Sarah Martinez just called. She's a veteran in Denver about to be evicted. I sent her your number when you're ready." Tyler smiled. He'd be ready. He'd always be ready. Because he'd learned something that afternoon 8 months ago, something he was still learning every day. The world didn't change because perfect people did perfect things. It changed because broken people did decent things. It changed because someone stopped when everyone else drove past. It changed because kindness, even small kindness, created ripples that touched shores you couldn't see. Tyler started his truck and pulled back onto the highway. He had work to do tomorrow. 3 new residents moving in, a grant proposal to review, a meeting with the city about the next location. But tonight, he went home to his own warm house, fed Ranger a good dinner, and slept without nightmares for the first time in weeks. And somewhere in the darkness, the circle continued, reaching out toward the next person who needed a hand, the next stranger on a highway, the next soul standing at the edge wondering if anyone still cared. The answer, Tyler knew now, was yes. Someone always cared. You just had to be brave enough to stop. Sometimes the smallest acts of decency create the largest ripples. A spare tire becomes a home, a moment of kindness becomes a movement, and one person's choice to stop reminds us all what humanity looks like. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to remember that goodness still exists in unexpected places. And next time you see someone who needs help, stop. You never know how that one moment might change everything.